Good day, everybody. Tracy Brown here, and I wanted to hop on to go into depth a little bit about a really awesome question that was asked last week around a mocking client. So I will tag you, Caroline, to make sure that you see this because you asked me the question about how I handled it. So for those of you who didn't follow that thread, it was a really good one on how we have a member of this group, and she had a client that was basically making fun of her. And, the thread was awesome. People who participated, thank you so much. It was great. And I kind of chirped in and was like, yeah, hey, that's happened to me. And I wanted to go and tell that story about, honestly, how I try to handle it with as much grace as possible. And I also know that this was, gosh, over not quite 10 years ago, but it was a while ago. And if I could handle it differently, I probably a little bit would now. I probably certainly would. I think I still would have felt very similar though. So anyway, let me just start with that. And first, before I get into this video, I want to say thank you to everybody who came live to the webinar last night or who registered. And now until the next couple, I guess, 2 weeks. Feel free to ask me any questions about it, about the training, about the non-diet counseling skills training. It has so much of how I initially learned how to be, how to unpack people's struggles and how to go deeper. And anyway, I talked a ton about that on the webinar. If you didn't watch it live, it is kind of long. I went longer than I wanted to. I wasn't expecting to, but I kind of just kept going deeper with things than I thought. So I appreciate anybody who hung in there with it. So anyway, if you need details, let me know. All right. So let me give you the story as succinctly as I can. Is that I was working with she turned 14 in the course of our work together. So it's a 14-year-old girl. She had, her history was with anorexia and some night eating. The other interesting tidbit about her, and this has been a long time ago, so now she's an adult, is that she was on the spectrum. I do think that it wasn't autism. I think it's more, but similar, if that makes sense. She never really had a complete diagnosis because her parents didn't really want to know, but they knew, if that makes sense. So that was another interesting part. This poor child did not know that she might have had some neurological differences, and she struggled socially, and that was a part of her eating disorder. So just kind of put that as a little background in your mind. Anyway, what was interesting about this is that she did have some. What was really okay? So this is a adolescent. So it's always interesting when you're working with adolescents and teenagers, is because what is not what's dysfunctional emotional management, what is being a teenager and working with the changes and the frustrations that come with that time. It's hard to know sometimes as you're working with people. But anyway, I want to lay also the foundation for the dynamic is that here's a young girl that also, putting this out there too, had her puberty suspended. Her parents were really and this girl knew about this, that there's a family history of getting early periods at like 10. And so she hadn't been it looks like she was headed towards puberty early, like 9, 10 years old. And her parents had, she was taking medications for a couple years to delay that as well. So there's a lot of interesting little tidbits that go in this that will maybe make sense to you later, that I believe deep down this daughter knew something was going on with her. I think she felt rejected for not her body being wrong because of the medications and injections she was getting prior to meeting me to delay the onset period. Anyway, but she weighed more. She had gone on a diet. Her parents were also very fat phobic and thin, obsessed and health obsessed people who were both, admittedly, like, they watch their weight and they try to eat less. So this is all the background, and that's why it's so important to know the deep history, and that's why the first sessions are really important. And we talked about that this last night. Is that so? This person presented, and I think with some underlying, honestly, rage and grief, and that presented. So in sessions, we were talking about, she was very obsessed with like this model-esque way of looking. She was tall. She was a tall person, but she lost probably 30 pounds the year before. So already a young person who is tall, she lost weight to be more the cultural ideal and to be more pleasing to her parents. She was upfront about those things. But her affect was different in terms of like how she could hold eye contact and how she related. But she was also brilliant and what's the right word? Pretty emotionally, she was pretty intuitive. So it's really, it's an interesting mix. So anyway, as the sessions would go by and we were talking about, how, diets cause these different symptoms. She was having a lot of food obsession. So she had a lot of misery, but she was very ambivalent. And so as time went on, we were doing some meal planning. And slowly her food was going up only because, she had pressure from her parents. She was seeing me, seeing therapy. And I want to get to the point, here the mocking. But we're talking about health at every size, talking about cultural ideals, talking about, just the pressure of things. And, as time went on, she got to where she was trusting me more and more. But she would also, because of who I am, which is pretty calm and compassionate and, deeply curious about a person's experience and what they're going through, and not trying to teach and to tell, but to just relate and to be. She was very smart, and she actually knew she was smart. She knew, like, I'm not going to directly try to boss her around or something like a parent, but because of how I am, I think I talked about this in the thread, like I'm compassionate. Her mom was a very compassionate person, but also had no boundaries. And, when the daughter would have an outburst or be upset, would try to placate her, make her feel better, and all those kind of things. And whenever I'd say, again, like, she would be struggling with, like, worried about gaining weight, let's say, and, like, all those kind of things. She would have different interactions about that. But sometimes it would come out like, how do you know you're in a small body? And I'm like, well, I hear you. Weight gain is a struggle, and is really, I'm paraphrasing, and again, this has been like 10 years ago, that it is hard. It's hard to grow up in this fat phobic culture. It is hard to potentially think about the idea of not being the cultural ideal, to allow that possibly to happen. That would be scary. And every time I would try to empathize, there was a big rejection of that. And eventually that led up to, like, telling her, basically, she's like, you think you're so great. And there's a lot of cursing. She didn't have a lot of filter and in management. I think this was a way for her to bring some shock value as well, just to see how I would react, because that's how she did with her parents. Both of her parents were very introverted and intellectual, and not that emotional as well. I didn't put that in there too. So this was a way to, like, get them to back down from them expecting things of her, or to have honestly reasonable behavior. There's a lot here to explain why this happened and the dynamics. But anyway, long story short, a lot of cursing me, what the F do you know, and you think you're so effing special and perfect and you know everything. And I was just like, yeah, lots of anger about all that, huh? And don't get me wrong, I was, like, internally like a little bit vibrating myself, because, it was intense. And she did not want to be comforted, because comfort felt like control. Comfort was coupled up with control for her, and people who were like that, she didn't want any part of it. And so it's difficult, right, in a session to do the compassionate, empathetic thing, knowing that, like, that's going to get rejected. And instead of, we can't make people feel better sometimes. That's the point, is that she wanted to see what I was going to do with her outburst. She wanted to see if I was trustable, and trustable meaning, like, not trying to make her feel better, not trying to make things pretty, not to try to make myself feel better, because that's what she was used to. It was to see, can you handle my ugliness and still care about me? I think that's the bottom line. And so what does this have to do with food? All these conversations were always about food and body image. And every time we would talk about the possibility of body trust, that's what would set her off, because she knew that that would be, it's one of those things that she wasn't there to trust herself yet. She needed to hang on to this thin thing. It was like, this is making me miserable, but this is the thing that has gotten me some, at least like social cred. This is the thing that initially made my parents happy. And there was just a ton of conflict about that, so just to put that out there to you all, there's always going to be a ton of conflict, whether your client's 13 or they're 63. There's going to be a lot of conflict around losing the thing that at one time provided a little bit of hope and a little bit of protection. And so this client's way, she didn't really have the emotional ability yet, because of a lot of circumstances and because of her age, and possibly because of some of her not well treated affect struggles, to navigate what we were talking about and to manage it. But what turned the tide with a lot of that was just our interactions. And I want to share one more quick story about that with her. Is that you might ask, well, what happened next? And is that when I didn't try to make her feel better, let her be ragey, let her curse, all those kind of things, let her lay on the floor and wail, and just be with her in safe containment around that. Pretty soon after, there was less outbursts. There was actually an outburst before this session. After this one, there weren't any more like that. I worked with her for about 1.5 years over the course of time. So I'm going to answer Caroline's question here a second. So, yeah, I'm not reading this out loud, folks. You can read it yourself, but this is really good, Caroline. That your calmness freaked her out. It wasn't that you did anything wrong. It's always a projection. So for me, my client was totally projecting because of my kindness. Kindness and calmness, kindness and compassion for her felt like, I'm going to be placated. I'm going to be made to tell what to do. It was just nothing that I could do anything about. Yeah, that's right. Can you love me in my ugliness? Can you love when I throw a fit? Can you love me? So we're working on attachment cries here, people. And I know this is deeper stuff. If you don't know what attachment theory is, you might want to go look it up. I talk a lot about that in my supervision with clients, about knowing attachment styles and stuff like that. Not as dietitians that we're going to do anything about it, but you want to know what you're working with when people are really struggling and panicking and crying and all those kind of things. It's usually an attachment cry. They're not in that moment the adults. They are something else is acting out there. So anyway, the other thing I want to share with you, I just have to share it since I'm on the phone with you all, is that the same client, one time she had agreed finally to bring her snacks into session, which was great. She came right after school, had her snack, and one day she just had a bad day at school. And hey, do you have your snack? And let's go ahead and get that out. And I've got my snack too. Let's hang out and eat and chit chat a little bit. And she got it out. She stood up. She looked me right in the eye. It was saltine crackers, like cheese and crackers and something else. And she stood up, took those crackers and crushed them up, and let them go in my office floor. And this was before the other outburst, by the way. She wanted to see what I was going to do, and I knew that. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not some saint. I had this ball of rage that came up. Are you freaking kidding me? I totally had that feeling, but because this is our job, is to learn. And if you have troubles at all with any kind of feeling upset with clients or angry or whatever, please get into supervision, do your own therapy, ring me up so you don't have to feel freaking out inside about things too. But anyway, I had this ball of rage, but I was able to okay, she's going to see what I'm going to do. Am I going to lecture her? Am I going to scold her? I'm going to do it, take care of things for her. I didn't say anything. I just sat down. I just started picking up. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do the whole session. I'm just going to sit here and pick up all these little kernels and crumbs of crackers. And about 20 minutes that went by, I sat in silence. She sat there, did something else, doodled, I don't know what, and eventually I go, hey, can you come down, sit with me on the floor and help me pick this up, please? And she did. And so that was a pretty powerful moment. And, just being able, she wanted a reaction. I didn't give her one, but I also expected of her that this is, just by the way I handle it, like, this is not cool. We're not going to do this to each other. We're not going to, we're not going to do this. So after that, really a couple weeks after that is when she did the other thing. And after that, there were no more, like I said, no more outbursts. There was more like, I don't love all this. This is really hard, but I know you can handle it. And so there you go. Again, I'm not saying this is how you handle every single thing, because I don't always have the answer as well. But we really want to practice noticing our own, sensations, noticing our own experiences, our own countertransference, whatever's going on. Because if you can start with your own flinch and be with, like, what are they saying through this behavior around their food, around the conversations around food and body, all that kind of stuff, what you'll see is that you can respond to what their attachment cry is a lot better. Okay, so last thing, anyway, I worked with her for about 1.5 years. She did end up gaining appropriate amount of weight she needed to, slowly. It took a long time because she had to build trust, and she had to do it at the pace that she could do it. I also want to say that she had a fabulous therapist that was great, and so if she hadn't had that right therapist as well, I don't think that, I think things would have been rougher for me, the therapist. I think it was all a good team, so that's why team is really important when you're working with this amount of entrenchment and multifaceted struggles. So keep that in mind too. So if you're a coach listening to this and you have somebody who's similarly struggling, don't go it alone. It's a lot, and I think the road's harder. So have supervision, be working with somebody else that can help you, help you with aspects of things. You don't have to do everything. So, and maybe you don't want to, or you definitely shouldn't. Anyway, I hope this little video, mini case study helped you. I could talk about this for 2 hours, really pick this apart because of what was happening. I didn't really give too many specifics about all the struggles, but some of the main struggles for her were around and it's important to pick up on themes with people as well. Some of the reasons for her outbursts were about superiority and inferiority. This was a strategy for her, and this is a really common, if you look at, this is something I have in like my worksheet packets, for other dietitians, but you'll see different kind of cognitive strategies that we can see related in their food. And one of them is this, where it's like, this is a good body, this is a good person, this is a bad body, this is a bad person, this is a lower level. I mean, she was very blunt, and I think it was partially because of her processing, but certain kinds of people with certain kinds of looks and body sizes are inferior, just inferior humans. And she had a lot of pride and a lot of stuff that we had to really work through and unpack. And that was a lot of her anger, sometimes towards me as well, is because it kind of fit the cultural ideal and in different kinds of ways. And she just felt it, not hypocritical, but like, well, it's easy for you to like do this work because, you got it going on. And I, she said things that a lot of adults won't say. So it's really important that you know how to navigate that. And that's what we did a lot of is, when you talk about how diet culture and all this competing comparison, it's a setup to divide all people. It all sucks. And all of this is a construct anyway. So we had to go into really deep topics that, a 13-year-old typically doesn't have to talk about, but, she needed it, and that's what we needed to do. So anyway, I hope this was helpful. I appreciate the thumbs up and stuff I gotten today with this because, I need to know from you all, like, what topics are important to make this group worthwhile for you to be in here, So anyway, I hope all of you all, again, I want to thank those who signed up for the webinar about the depth of work you can do, and this is a good example of it. And if you didn't catch it, the replay will be up. If you watch my emails, you'll have the replay hopefully later today as well. So let me know if that was helpful, if you have any questions. And if you have anything that you'd like to be discussing on this channel, please let me know. Thank you all so much for watching and take care.